I welcome back to the newest and most exciting installment of The President and the Cockroach, the video book. Today we're going to read the third part of chapter 4, where the soon-to-be ex-president decides to fly the coop, so to speak. Again, it's a great book to listen to. It's a great book to see the video of, but you really, especially with times being as they are, need to buy a copy of this book. I'm telling you, you want to read it again and again and again to find out exactly how the president who ran away. I'm just saying. I wrote this 2 years ago, kind of realizing what might occur. And even though it's full of insects, so is our government. But then that's another story entirely. Again, click the link. Get yourself a copy of the Amazon book. You'll be glad that you did. Promise. Okay, if you're ready, here we go. So how could this deal be made? The soon-to-be ex made some calls to some of the people he had learned his business from in Queens way back in the 1970s, before Roy Cohn had taken him under his wing and into Manhattan for the first time. The general consensus of the advice that the president got was that he would need 40K or so per kilo of ergotamine precursor from ergot fungus native to Eastern Europe. Each lab would cost anywhere between 10K and 100K for the reflux apparatus, the chromatography column, a vacuum distillation unit, an argon gas supply, and various lights, glassware, solvents, and reagents. If he was going to be making high-quality LSD, branding it with his symbol, he would also need a gas chromatograph, a mass spectrometer, a nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscope, and an infrared spectroscope to test the quality of his acid. And each tab would need a good organic chemist to supervise the work. According to the NSA, the president read in an eyes-only report, the archives of the hive and rhodium were still accessible, and there was the darknet, so the how-tos could be easily taken care of. Of course, he would have to compete with those damn Chinese. Their labs were making everything under the sun, but finely crafted artisanal LSD could be a real moneymaker. Each lab could probably produce a kilo of LSD each month, generating 3 mil or so. It would be easy for the right chemist, and there were plenty of those with crippling college debt to pay off from which to choose, to create 2 proprietary models of his acid. The top shelf version would be called Orange Needlepoint, the 95 to 98% extra purified with solid and clear pointy little crystals. The well version would be named White Fluff, 85 to 90% pure and resembling frosty snow. Maybe he could even get Hoffman's recipe for his lavender acid. The president would make that chemist a deal that he couldn't refuse. There were labs in Switzerland and Canada that he could raid. After all, he could offer them the chance to work for an historical figure, himself. How could anyone turn that opportunity down? Besides, he wouldn't be taking any of those bad drugs himself, the president told himself. His doctor had him on an aspirin a day and 2 other medications, not drugs, finasteride and phentermine. He wasn't a damn druggie. Finasteride helped the chief executive with his hair, and his doctor assured him that if he stopped taking it, the former glorious leader of the free world might experience disorders of libido, ejaculation, or orgasm. But since, besides simply being the president, he was a star, he could do anything he wanted without any negative repercussions. He'd been doing that for years. His doctor had also prescribed the president fen-phen. He had taken it for years until those morons at the FDA banned the fen part, fenfluramine. He had shown them by making an anti-vaxxer friend of his Surgeon General, those bitches. So he had only the phentermine to help control his weight, improve his blood sugar, decrease his blood pressure, and improve his cholesterol. But that meant no alcohol, which we didn't use anyway. The leader of the free world had asked his doctor if there were any side effects. The doctor said to watch out for seeing, hearing, or feeling things that weren't there, like that was going to happen. Decreased ability to exercise. He hadn't needed to do any exercise for over 40 years. He felt like he was 35, and he had since he was a strapping young man of 20. Or trouble with thinking or speaking. He used the same great words now that he had used for the past 50 years. Or decreased interest in intercourse. He'd always preferred a nice, quick blowjob anyway. It was all good. The man who would soon be the former president walked out of the White House, saluted the Marines who flanked the steps, boarded the Sikorsky VH-60N helicopter, Marine 1. As soon as the helicopter left the ground behind the White House and reached tree level, 4 other identical helicopters swarmed around it, shifting in formation and performing their function as decoys. The presidential shell game. These helicopters spent their downtime parked at an obscure little naval air station about 70 miles or half an hour flight time southeast of the presidential residence. The shell game flew 20 miles southeast to Joint Base Andrews. The soon-to-be ex-president then changed planes boarding Air Force One and flew off to Patrick Air Force Base near Cape Canaveral. Air Force One landed in Florida, taxied into a very, very large hangar, and 10 minutes later taxied out the other side, the gigantic doors closing behind it. 15 minutes after that, the first of 7 Gulfstream G650 executive jets taxied into the hangar, and 5 minutes after each went in, it left, taking off from the runway directly in front of the hangar. All 7 Gulfstreams were airborne within 30 minutes. The Gulfstream G650 is a superb executive jet with a cruising speed of 690 miles an hour and a range of 6,800 miles. This remarkable airplane can accommodate 8 passengers, but 6 of the planes that left Miami had no passengers, and the remaining plane had 1 passenger, a pilot and a co-pilot, and Secret Service steward, licensed to kill and serve beverages and a light lunch. At the same time that the president left Miami to become the former president, there had been 7 Gulfstream G650s for sale on avbuyer.com with asking prices anywhere between $45 and $64 million. The owners were contacted by a very large, very intense, and very obviously governmental representatives, given a choice to rent their planes to the Presidential Airlift Group or have them confiscated and later returned by the Presidential Airlift Group. The owners quickly agreed to the rental option. From Miami, a G650 could reach northern India, Hong Kong, South Africa, the Middle East, all of South America, and all of Europe without refueling. The 7 planes sped off in all 4 of the cardinal directions. When the president who ran away, he left his wife in New York City with their child. She would have Secret Service protection for the rest of her life, and the president who ran away had made arrangements before he ran away to have a generous allowance deposited into her account on the 1st of every month in perpetuity. The president who ran away's older children likewise would have security paid for by the taxpayers as long as they lived, but they were busy building resorts, hunting big game, making wine, branding buildings, and selling their lines of clothing, so they hardly knew that he had gone. The president who ran away's youngest daughter, Pandora, just continued clubbing, surrounded by very studly Secret Service agents. She was as happy as she could be because, as her father's Russian friends would say, strong as bear, smart as tractor. Bless her heart. The now former president had decided in the nick of time to flee from the unending lies of the media. Congress was beginning to investigate his relations with foreign nations and their leaders. Americans had rediscovered the empowerment of mass demonstrations. Many of the things that had made the United States of America great had been discarded at his discretion, and his attempts at dodging laws and traditions in the same way he dodged paying his taxes, secured rezoning permits, got all of his subcontractors to work on his projects for free, were weakening the nation's foundations. But while he had been in power, there had not been even one insect popping out of the head of any American citizen, as far as most people knew.